Thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to be going over workspaces and introducing the new workspace updates. My name is Alex Shirazi. I'm a product designer at protocols.io. And before we get started, I'd like to just mention that at the end of this session, we're going to have a Q&A. And so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A section and not the chat, and we'll address the questions at the end. This webinar is being recorded, so keep that in mind as you are asking any questions, but also if you'd like to reference it in the future, it will be made available on the protocols.io webinars page. So when we take a look at the major elements of protocols.io, we primarily have the file manager, workspaces, and the editor, which you may be familiar with. Workspaces is a change that we're making in an effort to simplify and streamline the overall process of managing your research on protocols.io. And we'll be going through how we're optimizing the creation flow of protocols and documents, simplifying the components user interface, and an introduction to workspaces and how you'll be transferring to workspaces in the next week. Now, it's important to note that workspaces, although have a lot of new, exciting, and unique features, they're formerly known as groups. So any groups that you currently have on the platform will be referred to as workspaces. When thinking about how we could streamline the overall process, we thought about what it really meant to touch all aspects of the protocols.io platform. And our goal is to bring structure to your research and provide a secure platform to do this, a platform where you can develop and share reproducible methods. Key on reproducible there, because I think one thing to note is that it's not only important for you to have work that can be reproduced by others, it also needs to be reproducible on your own team as well. And so whether you're publishing, you can use protocols before, during, or after publication. And if you're not publishing, you can use protocols.io securely for collaboration with colleagues throughout the entire process. And so our effort for upgrading and introducing workspaces is part of this overall simplification process. So first, I'd like to talk about how we're optimizing the creation flow. This is something that has already been released, so you may have noticed it already. One thing that is an addition to that change is updated user profiles. So you might have noticed that the user profile now takes on a little bit of a different shape. This allows us to focus on the content that's more important and keep the content that may need to be quick to access, such as bio or messaging, etc., always at your fingertips. More importantly, we've created a new way to create protocols from a user interface standpoint. And if I go ahead and go on the plus button here, typically I'll get a drop down. Now I'll get a drop down that has new protocol instead of new protocol and new document. And if I click on new protocol, then I'm asked to choose a folder within one of my workspaces. And if I choose a folder within one of my workspaces, I'm then prompted for what kind of, or what I should say, type of protocol or document I'd like to create. So in this example, let's say we'll click on biology protocol, and then you'll see it goes into that familiar flow that you're used to. It's a protocol, and I've actually added a step here. And so if you click on new document, then it'll go into new document as you know it. The next item and optimization that I'd like to discuss is the components. And so going back to that same example where you get to choose what kind of protocol you're going to be creating, whether it's a protocol that's optimized for biology, computational workflows, or chemistry, depending on which of these items you tap on, you'll be served a different optimized set of components. And so if I, again, use biology as an example, then I'll see that I have the components that are most important to biology in this tray. And we've actually cleaned up the icons in this tray as well a little bit. And so what I'll be able to do if I want to access the entire database and library of components is simply just click on the biology button, and that takes me to all the different categories and standard configurations. And so if I click on chemistry, for example, then I'll be taken to a list of components that are optimized for chemistry. One example of a chemistry specific component here is the spectral data that we have here. Now, oftentimes there's going to be a primary set of components that I'm using most of the time. And so that's when the favorite feature really shines with this new layout. And so any item that you favorite will be in its own kind of tab here where you'll be able to click on this star button or favorite button and access any of the components here. Now, we are continuously making updates and advancements to the editor, the workspaces, and profile pages. And so later in this webinar, I'll show you the easiest and quickest way to send any feedback you may have to the development team. So moving on to workspaces. As I mentioned earlier, workspaces are part of a simplification method where we are taking the idea of a group and the idea of the My Files folder or your personal folder and merging them into one. And so when you first access the website once the workspaces are live, which is scheduled for next week, you're going to be prompted with a flow similar to this. And what it's going to showcase is your existing workspaces that are below. This is a fresh account that I'm using just for testing. So actually, there are no other workspaces listed here. But essentially, you will be asked to choose a name for your workspace if you don't already have a workspace. And all of the files that are currently in the My Files folder on your protocols.io account will be transferred over to a workspace. And so this is a way we can kind of streamline the process of having all the files in dedicated areas or dedicated workspaces as we move forward. So I will go ahead and just, for the sake of this example, enter tissue culture lab and then click on next. And as you see on the left-hand side here, I have my new workspace icon. And so we have successfully transferred all the files over to the tissue culture lab workspace. Of course, this is a test account, so it's not listed on premium. So I have the option to upgrade at this point as well. And once I'm in the workspace, you can see that the My Files icon is no longer here. And any new files or any new protocols, documents, or collections that I create will be assigned to a particular workspace. And so I think this is an important thing to note, that there's always going to be a workspace associated with any files that you have. And we've seen that this makes things a lot more streamlined in the overall process. So that's a quick introduction to workspaces. I think that there was one other really important item that I wanted to discuss, and that's the best way to collect feedback. And so, as I mentioned, we're constantly making changes, whether it's to the editors, the overall flow for creating workspaces and creating new files, and the components list. And so, if you ever have feedback, make sure that you send it over to the team. We're very responsive. I know that there are some of you on the call that have already submitted feedback that has been implemented, and we are grateful to you. Your changes do make it to the website, so we definitely appreciate this. One of the easiest ways to send feedback is just to expand the left side bar and then click on this help tab at the bottom. And then actually, once you click on that help tab, it opens up a window directly in the sidebar that allows you to enter your feedback message. If there's something that you like, let us know. If there's something that's bugging you, let us know. or if there are any issues that you believe are on the site, you can even add an attachment, and that goes directly to our team, and we're usually pretty responsive. And so, a quick overview of everything that we discussed today. There's going to be new user and workspace profiles. New user profiles have already been rolled out, so you might have noticed that change. We have a simplification throughout the overall workflow, and that's for creating protocols and documents, but also workspace management. And most importantly, all files associated with your My Files folder previously will be moved to a particular workspace, either a new workspace that you create or an existing workspace that you have. So that means that all files are associated with workspaces. Another aspect I really want to highlight is security. And so, security is something that is core to every aspect of the protocols.io platform, whether you eventually want to publish or you are working on internal documents that will never be published. We have a uh, enterprise level security that you can rest assured that everything is going to be safe and secure on the protocols.io cloud, and workspace level permissions for members, so you know exactly where your data is going to be shared at your control and at your fingertips. And we won't go deep into the aspects of security on this call, but it's definitely something we want to highlight, especially as we're moving forward towards this overall process of this collaborative workspace environment. The last thing I want to mention is that the team curates on a weekly basis a really nice set of protocols. And so if you haven't seen it already, definitely check out the protocols.io homepage and the protocols that are highlighted there. This is a little bit of an older set of protocols that we have here, but lately there have been a lot of great protocols related to research and advancements in the coronavirus field and other areas of research. So definitely make sure you check out some of the latest featured protocols on the protocols.io homepage. That's it for today's webinar. We can now open it up to questions if there are any. And remember that if there is any feedback that you have, you can always submit it to us in the future. So I will open it up to Anita. Anita, have any questions come in through the Q&A?
It looks like there are some questions coming in, yes. And the first question somebody asked is, can I still invite new members to a workspace?
Yeah, absolutely. So just as, and let me see if I can kind of go back to one of these workspace slides here. Just as you were able to invite members in previous times into a group, you'll be able to invite members to the workspace as well. One thing I'm actually not highlighting here, and I don't have a screenshot for, is the workspace profile page. But that profile page will also allow you to not only add members, but if you're a workspace admin, you'll be able to manage permissions for those members as well.
Great. And then somebody else asked, will public content change?
So public content will not change. So if you have something that has been published and it has been associated with a group, the overall access and experience of viewing those files will be the same. Just as you had groups in the past, you will have the same groups, but they'll just be referred to as workspaces. So as a viewer of the site, either coming in externally as a user or non-user, you should be able to have the same overall experiences. Workspaces primarily optimizes your files and folders within the platform and where your protocols are stored. But externally, especially if you've published or added a published protocol or publication to a workspace, it should still be accessible.
Great. And then there's another question. What changes if you upgrade your workspace to premium?
Yeah, so we are real, excuse me, reeling. we are rolling out some exciting changes to the premium model, and more elements of that will be announced in the future. But with the Workspaces changes, what you'll be able to do is have removed limits on the number of private protocols that you have. You'll have an increased amount of storage, and you'll have overall more control on everything that you're doing with the platform on a private side of things. But if you are planning to publish your research and you don't need more than 5 protocols in your workspace, 5 private protocols, and you plan on publishing, then you can continue to publish protocols as you see fit. Now, one thing that actually a lot of people might not be aware about is that we have an invite feature that allows you on non-premium accounts, you can invite users to the protocols.io platform. And for every person that you invite, you increase that limit on how many private protocols you can have in your workspace. And so if you do need a couple extra protocols, but you don't need to go full on premium and you want to stick to a free account, you can invite a couple new members to your workspace, to the protocols.io platform. And if they sign up, you get free protocols. So I can make sure that we post that link in the show notes.
Great. And then there's another question. Can I invite users to the workspace only to view and run the protocol, but not able to edit?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So depending on how involved you want that person to be, you might be more interested in just sharing a link to the protocol that you have. Although if you are planning on managing the run records of that particular user and inviting them to the group, then you might want to actually invite them to your workspace. So I guess it depends on how involved you would want that user to be.
Great. And then I see one more question for now. What happens to protocols that are shared with me?
Great. So protocols that are shared with you will remain in your in the protocols.io platform. There is an area of the site where you can view all files, and in the view all files folder, not only do you see all the files that are your files across different workspaces, but you can also access files that are shared with you. And so files that are shared with you will continue to be shared with you.
Great. And that's all the questions I saw for now. But
Okay,
if you have any
great.
questions later, you can reach out.
Excellent. Yeah. And if you have other questions that come to mind, feel free to either send it directly to me or someone else on our team. Or if you have any feedback for the protocols.io platform, feel free to use that feedback form that we showcased earlier. Cool. Thank you very much.